Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. President of India has appointed Gyanesh Kumar as the new Chief Election Commissioner, replacing the outgoing Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Along with him, uh, Haryana Chief Secretary Mr. Vivek Joshi has also been appointed as the Election Commissioner. Now, these appointments come in while the Supreme Court hearing, which is on in the apex court, challenging the appointment process, that hearing is pending. That hearing is scheduled to be happening tomorrow. And then this also comes on a day when just one day before, the Prime Minister headed panel on the selection panel of the Chief Election Commissioner, they met, and Rahul Gandhi supposedly has filed a dissent note. Now, yesterday when this meeting happened at 5:30, after that around 6:30, Congress held a press conference where Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, Ajay Makan, and Mr. Gurdeep Sappal, they held the press conference, and Dr. Singhvi very clearly said that it seems that the government doesn't want credibility, but they just they want control. This is what Dr. Singhvi had to say. And they said that there was no harm if this selection panel meeting could have been postponed, and they could have postponed it till the time the Supreme Court hearing was pending. Now, does this come as a big setback to the electoral democracy? Joining me now is transparency activist Anjali Bharadwaj. Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining. And the very fact that at midnight this appointment notification came, almost it was midnight when this notification came, that Gyanesh Kumar will be appointed. He's a senior Kerala cadre IS officer who's apparently going to continue till January 26, 2029. Now, what do you think? Does this come as an electoral, as a hurdle to the electoral democracy?
Nilu, in any electoral democracy, when elections take place, one very important thing that has to happen is that the regulator, the umpire, which in our case under the Constitution is the Election Commission of India, that they ensure that elections happen in a free and fair manner. And like we always say, that justice must not only be done, it must also be seen to be done. Similarly, with the Election Commission, it's very important that the Election Commission has credibility. And what we have seen is that in the Constitution of India, when we gave ourselves the Constitution in 1950, what was basically stated was that a law has to be brought to put in place a selection committee on who will select the election commissioners, the chief election commissioner. And till the law is made, the Constitution said that the executive could make the appointments. And we did not have a law. For the longest time, the executive was making the appointment. Well, whether we were fortunate or whatever it was, by and large, the Election Commission was seen to be unbiased. It was seen to be a very strong body, and elections in India were by and large considered to be free and fair. In 2019, this whole thing came under a huge cloud because what started happening was that the actions of the Election Commission were seen to be not unbiased. People started feeling that when there were complaints about the opposition, the Election Commission was acting with great alacrity. But when there were complaints about the behavior, the speeches, the kind of things that the ruling party was doing, the Election Commission was seen to be wanting. They were not acting. So there was a huge problem that people started perceiving the Election Commission as not being unbiased. And the matter was taken up in the Supreme Court. In fact, one of the election commissioners at that time, Mr. Ashok Lavasa, also said that his dissent notes were not even being taken on board. So it was not just from outside, even within, there was a perception that the Election Commission was no longer independent. The Supreme Court was therefore approached to say that the election commissioners must be appointed in a balanced manner so that it's not the preponderance of the ruling party, the executive, when the election commissioners are being decided. The Supreme Court in the Anup Baranwal matter gave a very, very stellar judgment. The Supreme Court said that the umpire can't be chosen by any one team. And therefore, the Supreme Court said that the selection committee for selecting the election commissioners should be it should be a balanced committee. It should not have the preponderance of the ruling party. And they said that till a law is brought in to make this selection committee, this balanced selection committee, they said that the Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India, these three people will make the selections. Now, let's see what happens after that. The government brings in a law immediately, almost immediately, and they remove the Chief Justice of India. And the law says that the selection committee will henceforth have the Prime Minister, a union cabinet minister, and the Leader of Opposition. Now, basically, this means that out of 3 votes, it's a 2:1 ratio. 2 with the ruling party and 1 opposition. What does this mean? This basically shows that the intention of the government was to make sure that even after the Supreme Court gave such a clear judgment, the selection panel, the selection committee will continue to be biased. It will continue to have a preponderance of the ruling party, in this case, the Bharatiya Janata Party. So now this matter has again been taken to the Supreme Court in January 2024. More than 1 year ago, this matter was again taken to the Supreme Court, where the petitioners have said that this is a violation of what the Supreme Court had clearly directed. This is clearly going against the letter and spirit of what the Supreme Court said in the Anup Baranwal matter, and therefore it should be struck down, this law. It's unconstitutional, it should be struck down. Unfortunately, it's been more than 1 year and the Supreme Court has refused. It has actually not taken the time to hear
Right.
this very, very important matter. We've seen appointments happen in the meantime, and the Supreme Court has just put it in a cold storage. The Supreme Court, even when the matter has been mentioned in March last year, the matter was mentioned that, look, an appointment is going to be made to the Election Commission. We are on the verge of elections. Please hear this matter. Please make sure that the right kind of committee appoints the commissioners. The court at that time, Neelu, said very clearly that at this time we are not inclined to give a stay on that law. We don't want to interfere because it will cause a chaos. There is a general election coming. The general election came and went. The results were announced in June. And from June till date also, despite repeatedly being approached, the Supreme Court has not taken up this matter. And now we have a situation that the Chief Election Commissioner retired. It was a routine retirement. The Supreme Court was seized of the matter. And yet the court did not do its hearings and announce a judgment. Now, therefore, we have a situation today where the Chief Election Commissioner is retiring. Mr. Rajiv Kumar is retiring today. Yesterday, the selection panel, which is an unbalanced selection panel, met, and a new Chief Election Commissioner has been appointed. The chief election commissioner who has been appointed was earlier the election commissioner. And therefore, when the chief election commissioner was appointed, there was a vacancy and the election commissioner's post fell vacant. And not only was the chief election commissioner appointed, another election commissioner was appointed as well. And while the Supreme Court simply said that we will hear the matter a day after. So the Supreme Court is going to hear the matter tomorrow. And we already have a new chief election commissioner. We already have a new election commissioner. So it's going to be a completely, it really makes a mockery of the whole
So,
exercise.
Anjali, now that the new poll chief has already been appointed, so now the Association for Democratic Reforms, in fact, I was speaking to Mr. Jagdeep Chokar in the morning before this live program, and he did say that he's going to challenge the new appointment of Gyanesh Kumar as well, and of course, the earlier hearing as well. But the question is that did the top court miss out on an important opportunity on 12th? Had the court wanted, they would have put out a caveat in the form of an interim order or something where they could have told the government that not to go ahead with the appointment till the time the hearing was pending. That could have been a possibility, isn't it so?
They could have done many things, Neelu, the Supreme Court, and I think that it's deeply disappointing. It's very, very anguishing what has happened. Because what the Supreme Court could have simply done, and which was expected from the apex court of the country in a democracy, is that when a matter of this nature reaches the Supreme Court, the court must act with some urgency. We are talking about a situation where, in an electoral democracy, we are faced with a situation where the Supreme Court has said that the appointments to that constitutional body, to the electoral umpire, must be made in a balanced manner. And the government of the day brings a law, a bill to parliament, which goes completely contrary to what the Supreme Court said. It basically, this kind of action really casts a huge question mark on the election commission itself. There can be nothing worse in an electoral democracy than people losing faith in the election commission, in the electoral empire. And that is exactly what happened. The
Right.
Supreme Court should have, I'm not only saying that they could have, they should have.
You
And
should
I
have.
feel that it was their moral, it was their obligation, it was a mandate that the Supreme Court should have fulfilled. They should have immediately
Right.
taken up the matter. They should have done hearings, and they should have decided. And they
Right.
should have actually, all that was being asked of the Supreme Court was to uphold its own decision.
No,
We
but
were
what is
not the
surprising is that civil society people like you, like Mr. Jagdeep Chokar, or for that matter, several others who talk about electoral transparency, uh, you talk about the urgency with which the courts should deal. And I was just reading a statement of Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Yesterday was his last day in office. And what he says, I'm just going to quote because it's published in Indian Express and several other papers, what exactly he said. And I'm just going to quote. He has said that long pending cases related to polls should be scheduled with due consideration to the election period so as to ensure a smooth electoral process. Now, this is what he says, that, the cases should be scheduled in such a manner so that they don't really disturb the electoral process. What would you really say to that? And he has said several other things, so I'll take a quick reaction on that as well. Yes, Anjali.
On that, I can't disagree with him. Like I said, the Supreme Court in this particular case was seized of the matter. The Supreme Court was approached in January 2024. That was 6 months, nearly 6 months before the general elections took place in the country. The matter was not taken up by the Supreme Court. In March 2024, when the matter was heard, the Supreme Court said that it's too close to the general elections and we don't want to do anything right now. It'll cause chaos in the country. After the general elections in May 2024, the results came out in June 2024. Beginning from that time onwards, we've had time when the Supreme Court could have, in a timely manner, taken up the matter. And that's really where the disappointment with the apex court lies. It's not as if the Supreme Court, is saying that, nobody came to us in time. The Supreme Court can't say that there was no time in between for us to hear the matter in a manner where there would be no disruptions. It's not as if we've been in election one after the other. There has been enough time in between when the court could have slotted its hearings. They could have heard this very, very important matter, which deals with constitutional issues, where the court had already given directions. They could have taken it up. And yet we did not see it happen. And Nilu, more than anything else, it's not as if the petitioners did not approach the court. The petitioners kept approaching the court, kept reminding the court that there are going to be vacancies now. The Chief Election Commissioner is going to retire very soon, my lord. Please listen to this matter. And it's urgent. And the Supreme Court, we have seen, especially in the last month or so, how they have repeatedly, despite mentionings, despite the fact that the lawyers of the petitioners were in court, in some cases when this happened, I happened to be in the courtroom as well. The Supreme Court, the bench, said that we'll hear it. Don't worry, we'll hear this matter. I mean, the point is that in these kind of cases, you have to hear the matter in time. Once the appointments are made, what is the point of hearing these kind of matters?
Absolutely.
Look, this
Absolutely.
whole case was about who is going to select the election commissioners. If the Supreme Court, despite repeated timely reminders, did not hear the matter, once the election commissioners and the chief election commissioners have been appointed, I mean, it really becomes an exercise in futility. And Mr. Jagdeep Chokar might say that people will take this to court, they will challenge appointments. But Neelu, let me say this to you. Once an appointment is made, it is really a pity that one has to go against individuals. You see, then it starts looking like this is a fight against an individual, which it is not.
Right.
We are repeatedly talking about processes. We are saying that if electoral democracy has to survive, if people's faith
Absolutely.
and trust has to survive in democracy, in the Election Commission of India, this is totally to be avoided. That
Right.
somebody is appointed and then people are forced to challenge their appointments. People have
Absolutely.
nothing against individuals in these kinds of cases.
No, but
People
Anjali,
are saying that the process is incorrect, it's vitiated, and the Supreme Court should have heard the matter in time.
no, but you are talking about a vitiated process. But apart from the scheduling of the pending cases, what Rajiv Kumar spoke about, and he also said, and I'm going to quote him again, that he expressed concern over rumors being spread during elections. And I'm going to quote him exactly what he said. I have observed a pattern in the timing of certain narratives during peak polling or counting hours. A wave of fake allegations and rumors begins to spread across media and social media, misleading people and creating confusion. Narratives are deliberately set to distort facts. However, Commission follows a policy of restraint, choosing not to respond while the election process is underway, ensuring that focus remains on the integrity and smooth conduct of elections. This is what Rajiv Kumar had to say yesterday.
Look, Neelu, he's the outgoing chief. He's made points, that's fine. But just to give context to the kind of thing that he's referring to,
And by the way, he
in
also specifically mentioned, Anjali, that ECI has been unfairly blamed by those unwilling to accept the electoral outcomes. Yes.
Yeah. So let me just put this in context. The Election Commission of India drew a huge amount of flack under his leadership when elections happened and the Commission of India refused to put out basic information about elections. Now that has been one big charge against the Election Commission of India. The voter turnout is perhaps the most basic information that the Election Commission of India should put out to tell people how many people turned out to vote. And And we saw that in 2024 general elections, the Election Commission of India refused, even after several phases of that election, to give the voter turnout. Even when they gave the voter turnout, they were not giving the absolute numbers. Despite having the absolute number of voter turnout, they refused to make that public. We were only given a percentage figure, that X percentage of people came out to vote. Everybody in the country was demanding that the absolute voter turnout be brought and put in the public domain. People have a right to information in a democracy, which we are guaranteed under the Constitution, which the Supreme Court has upheld. Now, despite all that, despite the matter then being taken to court, the Election Commission till date has not given the statutory forms which contain the absolute figure of voter turnout. We are in February, the elections happened in May 2024, we are in February 2025. 8 months after the elections also, the Election Commission has failed in its duty to put out basic information, statutory, authentic information I'm talking about. They put out a lot of information, but what we are interested in, what citizens deserve and have a right to know in a democracy, is statutory and authentic information. That has not been put out by the Election Commission. And now it's very rich of the Chief Election Commissioner, as he's demitting office, to say that all these demands are not correct. We are people of this country have not been demanding anything outrageous. People have not been demanding something which the Election Commission can't do. We are in a digital age. The Election Commission has access to, through its returning officers, through its district election officers, all the Form 17C Part 1, Part 2. If they wanted, they could have put out that information on their website, just like they put out so much other information. They have failed to do it till date. So simply saying that these are demands that are wrong, they are harming the electoral process. Look, questions come up. The Election Commission was faced with questions by citizens because there were certain doubts. What the Election Commission should have done in a democracy, what was its role, was to put out very, very objective information so that those doubts could be allayed, so that people would have trust in the electoral process and the Election Commission. Instead of doing that, what we have heard and seen is that a lot of data is thrown at us, but not the data that should have been given, which is statutory and authentic. And what we are seeing is that the outgoing election commissioner, the chief election commissioner, just kept saying, trust in us, there is nothing to worry, don't ask questions. That is not the spirit of democracy. That only causes further harm to the public trust in the Election Commission and its functioning, and therefore electoral democracy, which is so unfortunate.
Well, the battle for electoral democracy seems like a long battle, and all eyes now would be on what happens in the Supreme Court. Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining on the Federal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.